Man, oh man. Man, oh man. So here we begins. Here is the first episode of, I don't know what I'm calling it, the Forgotten Podcast Series. I love that I'm calling everything Forgotten because it makes it seem like, as an outsider, something totally different than what I'm trying to do inside of this podcast. You know what I'm saying? On the outside, it's like Forgotten Series. What the hell's that supposed to mean? What, do you forget about it and you found it again? And in some ways, yes. In some ways, fucking yes. But I really wanted to begin this series as something about the book and something that we're trying to do within the book. Now, as a disclaimer, here's what it is. Right now, we are in a channel. You, my friend, are witnessing a channel, which you probably should leave. There you go. Let a couple more leave. And now, the idea is this YouTube channel is about the creation of a myth. Now, that creation of a myth, this is a 12, almost 13-year process. And over the years, many, many things have happened. Many people have jumped inside of this myth with me. Many people have listened to this myth. And this myth has grown quite a fucking bit over the years. It's been a process, man. It's been a fuck of a process. But for the first time, I really want to start and focus on the story here. And my goal is to tell you this in a way, the only way that I know how. Somewhat entertaining, but mostly not. And that's just the way it's got to be. Now, man, it's so much to talk about. So, this all began many, many years ago. Around 2012, around August of 2012, it was colder out. And in my personal life, I was hanging out with these two guys. And we were in a band together, and we were trying to make that work. So we'd go around, play shows, and we'd fucking do that whole damn thing. Every musician that's listening knows what I'm talking about. Just, I personally don't fucking like being on the road. I really don't. I'm the kind of musician that loves the studio, man. I fucking love making music, but I don't love actually playing it for people. Which is, you're going to get a sense of that as you keep watching this podcast. Now, for me, in my off time, I was really starting to find myself. I was a young man. I was like early 20s. And I really started to see who I was. I was trying to, finally get out of my parents' house and finally get on my own 2 feet, and do the adult thing. And in some sense of that, I didn't really have a response to who I was. When I went out into the world, I didn't have a ground. That's why you notice in your 20s, you definitely flounder a lot. You don't have this good solid foundation, right? Unless you're really close to family, I suppose. But for me, I was trying to escape some sort of trap. And in escaping that, I just kept realizing, like, well, I don't know who I am in this. I don't see my purpose in it. And it wasn't this mythology that came from that. It wasn't necessarily a purposeful direct response, but kind of a, over the years, accidental realization that I was always doing the right thing all along, right? That was kind of the point in which the book truly began, and it did begin as an idea of a book. Now, this all began as the way most myths begin, whereas I have to kind of remember this origin story. And every time I tell it, I get farther and farther away from the actual memory and more of the telling of the telling. So, as I stated, I kind of looked about making this book, but how did I make this book? Well, I just remember coming back from being with my friends, or I'm about to go and hang out with them. I don't remember which one. I didn't have my own room. I had to kind of crash in my parents' living room. And I laid down before I went to hang out with them on the couch or something, just to relax. And I was listening to music. And as I was listening to music, for the first time in my life, I meditated. It was totally an accident. I laid there. I felt that divine entry, and I felt that great weight come from me. And through that, it was the experience of that movement, of that inner and outer breathing. And it was just very, very amazing to me. And I didn't know I was meditating, It took me many years to realize it was a meditation. And I came out of it, and it just kind of all, in some sense, it was like I accidentally opened the door. I opened the door to this idea of mythology. Though at the time, I didn't fucking know that. Just as anything, it begins so innocent. It begins so without purpose. And I just accidentally fumbled into this fucking room and thought, oh, that'd be kind of cool if I started making my own book. It's just a random ass thought. And I didn't really take anything serious from it. Again, over the years, I would realize this, but man, to go back then, you'd have been like, oh, I just want to make a book. I don't know. Wouldn't that be kind of cool if I had my own fantasy? Kind of like all the other ones. That's how immature I saw it. I never realized what it would be. So in some sense, when I take that into the mythology of the book, I would say in the beginning of the creation of Yawandra, the Titans, when they sought about to create this place, it was to them this empty void. Where the planet would inhabit Yawandra, it was this formless, empty void. And they happened inside of this place after they had created the thought forms of the circle. Now, the circle was the concept of the I should say it like this. It was the concept of the divine cycles. Whereas you do something, there's a reaction to it, and you keep transcending or descending inside of that. It's life, man. You come, you go, you grow, you fall, all that stuff. It's just life. And from that point, when you die, you recycle. That's all the circle is, but they found something outside of it. And in the outside of that is where they created Yawandra, an idea, a concept, something to use as a tool. Because eventually these Titans would discover these strange beings. And in the discovery of these strange little invisible beings, they wanted to give them life. They wanted to give them purpose, and they wanted to give them a world to live on. They were trying to make these beings ascend back to the Creator. For he realized, the lead Titan, that maybe they were forgotten about. So you can kind of begin to see how the Forgotten series gets its name. Now that mirrors, its mythology mirrors my discovery of this place where I was living my life in this circle, in that cycle, playing music, coming home, playing music, coming home. You know, I didn't really have a job, and if I did, it was really little bit of money. And all this stuff, and me and the guys were working so hard on making this music and living this life, and we wanted to reach the stars. We were all young men, and that's all what we really wanted. But one day, I laid there and realized there was something more I wanted to do. As to why, I don't fucking know, but it felt that way. And then there's that accidental meditation thing. And then from that point, it all began. And as it begins so humbly, it's just a smattering of ideas thrown at the fucking board. Just random ideas. Nothing is concise. Nothing is how you should say, like, there's no form to it. It's just, and what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And mountain sickness? What about a sword gun? What about cloud cities? What about ancient libraries and greed and monarchies? What empires and government? Like, just fucking random as hell. Throwing them at the board. And I am so lucky that I wrote all this down, and I can always look back at the beginning of writing this book, and every time, you know, right at the top, the theme is forgetting. And that's just always been the point of this. It's just forgotten, and forgetting has always been the crucial form in this entire story. It wasn't some deep, profound thing where I was like, you know, I'm going to really make a statement and what forgetting is and all this and that. No, it was just on accident. But it's over the years I realized the depth of forgetting, this amnesia from things like our traumas that we bury deep down inside. And when they resurface, you realize how much you forgot, maybe something bad that happened to you, all the way to just being a forgetful person because you're so hyper-focused on some sense of your own life that you're forgetting this external life that everyone around you wants you to have, and you just keep getting reminded how you forgot this, how you forgot that, and how you bailed on this person and that, and there's the forgotten aspect there. And there's also the forgotten aspect of who I am. What kind of person am I? Who the fuck am I? That all was born through the years of constantly thinking about the theme of forgotten. Not necessarily something, again, I did not set down and say, like, this is going to be it. I'm going to be such a clever boy for doing all this. No, it was all an accident. And it was so beautifully manifested through the accidents of life. From the beginning here, on my first start, I literally look and I say, okay, what are the things that I enjoy? I wrote Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. There's a video game at the time called Dishonored, Skyrim, Half-Life, and Adventure Time. I'm like, oh, those are all so great. What do I want to borrow from them? And I came up with a couple things in each one. You know, like in Star Wars, I like the idea of forgotten protectors, like the Jedi. How in the later, what would be the first movies, you're like, what are Jedis? They were the guardians of the galaxies for thousands of years, but now they're not. What the hell is that? And I love the idea of the Force and a bunch of different worlds. Lord of the Rings, I love the creatures and the races of people. I love the lands. Skyrim, I love the time frame. I love the aspect of the being yourself inside of this world. I mean, you're kind of in a sandbox, but it's kind of a big sandbox. And I love the character of Gordon in Half-Life, how he's a silent protagonist, how you can yourself as a person encompass that silent protagonist. It's an easy way to not have to write dialogue. And I just kept doing that, and I just was like, okay, I like this shit. Let's keep dwelling on this. And over the times, I would just start asking questions like, well, we need a hero, an anti-hero, and a heroine. We need, who are the big bad guys? Is it a corporation? Is it an empire? Is it something totally different? All this stuff, and it just kind of manifested itself before me. But the entire time, it always kept the idea of forgotten. That's the first fucking thing, is forgotten. And as the maps are being drawn, as I'm slowly creating the elements of the people, and I'm kind of contemplating who lives where and what is their culture like and how long have they been there, and when those forgotten protectors turned into keepers of faith, and when those temples of God became temples of the Titans and the Aeons, and things really started to take shape, and there was always this looming questions that would always be at the horizon. That was the most beautiful thing about making this book. Always upon the horizon is questions to be answered. And there were some questions that were always in the horizon, and I would get irritated because I'd have to keep thinking about it. One is the forgotten people. Who are the forgotten people? Long time ago, I wrote, the land of the forgotten where the forgotten people dwell. This is the land of the ancient keepers of faith. Land and people that were long lost, wiped out by a long forgotten king in the ancient wars. People only known from legend. These people, these ancient people, were at one with this world, people of the land. Some say ancient aliens visited this land. They saw something in the people and their land that they dwelled in. In ancient times, people of what was called the forgotten people, because I never gave them a name, I just kept calling them forgotten people, lived with the land, very advanced in technology. They didn't bring any harm to the land. Monarchs saw profit in this. Some guy, I said, okay, the monarch must be the big bad guy. I don't know why, but he's a monarch. He saw profit in this and tried to take it from them. And everything was destroyed in the process. And he caused a genocide on these people. And now that advanced technology that the ancient people created is now controlling the monarch. And it's not good for the environment. For the ancient people had a connection with magic, so they could wield powers of the greater good, and the keepers were the protective force of those magic wielders. But this new technology is not being used in the same way, so it's destroying the land. Instead of protecting it, it's destroying it. And that was my first concept of the forgotten people, and you can see where it mirrors real life history, and like you look at ancient aliens, you look at our civilization and the modern thoughts that we could have about how we came to be. And there, it's very base there because I was a basic young child. But there's something else in there. Like, I would never have guessed what it would all turn into. The long forgotten people turned into the AOC. That long forgotten king turned into Oapake. The keepers of faith are still the keepers of faith, and that's what's beautiful about them. The monarch became aspects of greed, aspects of fear, thrown throughout Anaku, Aoman, Titan, and Aeon all together. That is a concept. The monarch taking the control of something and destroying it. What was once good and beautiful, now destructive and evil. That wasn't a singular person anymore. That was a group of concepts that exist inside of beings from time to time. Now, all of this, I'll definitely start going into more and more of the true lore, how it was born, and what it turned into, because that's kind of what I want to really make this channel about. What I want to make this podcast series about is myself as a person, what I made when it comes to this mythology, and how it grew. How did we get from this young 20-something-year-old who was almost illiterate, man? I swear I had a hard time reading. I didn't know how to write. I was just stupid. So inexperienced. How that guy thought to make a book, to make a fantasy series, and how did that turn into where I'm sitting right now? Because looking back objectively, hindsight, this mythology's creation is in some sense a person trying to understand themselves and a person trying to understand how they fit in the world around them. And not only that, but exploring what happens in the world around this person and how does he react to it? How does he interpret it? What does he think about certain groups of people? What does he think about certain thought forms, certain government types, certain God knows what's in this world? And the main idea over the years has been to realize that and to ask myself, who the fuck are you? And where do you come from? What is your mind? When you are by yourself, sitting in that room, let's say you're in the bathroom, because that's probably the only room you have a mirror in, I guess. And you look at the mirror and you look at that person looking back at you. My biggest question was, I don't like that I can't tell myself who that guy is. When I go in there and I see myself looking back at me, and I ask a simple question, I say, who is that person? The fact that I could not answer that made me realize that this journey of this mythology is something that I have to do, something that I have to explore. And I hope in the coming episodes, when I'm exploring the themes, I will be going deep into the history. I'll give it that Dan Carlin kind of, I'm going to go as deep as I can in the history of this book and tell you as much as I possibly can. Meanwhile, I'll give you notes on how that came to be. Meanwhile, I'll give you interpretations of how said history is affecting other peoples and lore and all that, the story. I'm going to go as deep as I possibly can to leave a sort of record of this mythology. That's going to be my major goal. And this is not going to be easy, keeping all this shit straight. But if we go to the beginning, we work our way forward, it shouldn't be that much hard. But the first episode 1 here, why forgotten? And now, for me, as I said before, it wasn't a sit down and call it forgotten because I have such a grand plan for it. Nor was it me saying, if I kind of keep it a little bit foggy, eventually the vision will come to itself. As long as we create the vessel for it to jump inside, then the vision truly can begin. It was just, that was the fucking word that hit me. Forgotten. Forgetting. Not only by looking at that word written out, do I like it. Forgotten. Forgotten. I don't know what it is, but I look at that word and I like it. Not only is it for the reason of, the more you think about mankind, the more a lot of forgetting plays a significant role in our development. Whether we forget the events of our past, whether we forget our different concepts of what things are in our world, or we forget about memories, whether we forget about entire civilizations, or even on smaller levels. When you play video games, and a lot of times the role-playing games will take this element, and they have your character just forget everything that transpired. And so he's got this amnesia, like, I don't remember, I just woke up in a jail cell. There's something about rediscovery, which in many aspects should be the true name of the series, Rediscovery. But I feel like Forgotten is such a better myth title than Rediscovery. Because in some sense, I always felt like, man, forgetting feels in the heart more than it ever would I would say you discovered something once again, because that's hope. And I love the suspense of, no, the series is called Forgotten. We're discovering something that has lost itself. And there is no redemption thusly. The redemption will come through the exploration of the stories to go. I think that's more beautiful in some sense. But not only that, let's go to my personal life. I would say that has been one of the main things that I struggle with in my life, and that is forgetting. Much like anyone else, it's just sometimes I just don't remember what you said, man. Like, or like, I'll get shit for, don't you remember we planned doing this? Don't you remember? I thought you remembered that upset me, and you'd keep doing it. I think you don't care about me, right? And people plant that stuff in your head, their own thoughts, and you got to dwell with that and go, did I forget? Or do I not give a shit? And that right there is where that idea of who am I is born. Because I would forget so much in my personal life, a lot of the times people would put their shit at me. Tell me, no, you're not forgetting, you have selective hearing. Or, no, you do know, you just don't care, right? This is an amalgamation of people throughout my life. This is not single anyone. This is just like I'm connecting everybody and putting them into a made-up person. So no one gets, thinking I'm talking about them. But this is just a general theme I've lived in. People will kind of assume, oh, I'm just choosing to not remember. I'm just choosing to not give a shit, or, it reflects in some way my selfishness, whatever it may be. Now, me as a person, I would say, are they right? Am I a bad guy? Do I really not care about them? I think I do. I'm pretty sure. I'm doing everything I possibly can for them, so much to the fact that it fucking hurts me. I'm like giving up so many aspects of myself for them to make them happy. And this is from childhood to my adulthood. But I'd still go am I a piece of shit? What am I doing wrong here? Why am I fucking this up a lot? And that slowly would develop into me having a problem with reflecting on self and always focusing on everyone else and not giving myself the deep exploration of who is this guy. Because I was always so focused on everyone else's opinions, everyone else's thoughts, their feelings, their concerns, or their state of being. It was so consuming to me. Because for the longest time, I developed this, because of forgetting all the time, I would develop this attitude that I have to keep everyone happy. I have to be everyone's buffer. I have to make sure everyone's okay, because then I can be okay. And in my own way, I would go home, or I'd go to my room when I was a kid or whatever it was, and I'd say, like, I want everyone to be okay so I can be okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted the world to be okay. Because I had so much guilt if I was okay and they weren't. From friends now to as a childhood friends and family and everything. Co-workers, you name it. People that I'm directly connected to. And I believe born out of all of that is the theme of forgetting. Because in some sense, I'm forgetting who I am. In other senses, I'm forgetting who they are. who they truly are, or I'm forgetting what they're going through, or I'm forgetting my role in their lives. And the minute I focus on myself, a lot of the times people would make you feel bad about that. And they'd make you doubt it. And I forget. I'm like, oh man, I forgot about that thing they wanted me to do. I forgot about this. I forgot about that. All I ever want to do is do my own fucking thing, you know? And of late, that's really been born for me out of the creation of this mythology I'm working on. I want to work on this. I want to fucking do this, but I always feel held back because of many aspects. You're not seeing your friends enough. You're not seeing, you're not going out enough and doing things. You're not giving a shit about your job. You're not doing all these fucking things you should be doing. You're neglecting people. And in my life, well, I'm neglecting people because I'm too busy trying to remember who the fuck I am. So it can create a lot of negative aspects. I'm not going to say that, see, the right thing to do is to just kind of set everyone aside and work on yourself. It's such a balancing act. It's such a difficult fucking balancing act. And a lot of the times you get irritated when people are being so fucking selfish, or when they're having their fucking problems and they forget that their problems affect you. Or, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of times you forget that. They don't see the reality of it. And though you can see yourself putting it down all the time, it's hard for you to see them putting it down for you. And so a lot of crazy fucking ideas jump in your head, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you start getting mad at people. You start getting distant with people, and you don't really notice that. You know, those are the very external things that happen that have affected this book. And honestly, they've grown inside of it. Because the more that I do this, the more I'm realizing you are what you do, and what you do is you. And through that concept, everything you've ever felt, you will always put in the work that you do. The way you think about other people is truly how you think about yourself. And what makes other people angry, what you get angry at with other people is that very thing you don't like about yourself, right? We're always doing that. Society, people, they're the mirror. The window of the soul is not necessarily what we think it is. It's more of a feeling. None of that stuff I just mentioned was an active thought in the beginning of the creation of this mythology. All of that is stuff I picked up on over the years of doing this. The many long, long hours of sitting in front of this fucking computer and trying to figure out anything. Who the fuck is Martis? What are the Anaku? How does magic work in this world? What are the ambitions of Aik Beovac? And what really happened to Oapake? Was he truly betrayed? Or did he betray himself? When I sit down and I'll ponder these things for the story, try to give depth to it, try to give truth to the mythology, and in the reality, I'm looking at aspects of myself. I'm looking at versions of me that I didn't really ever explore. And for the first time, I've given them names. I've given them character. Made it seem like it's just a fantasy. These people aren't real. But I know deep down that they are really aspects of myself. And how that grew was the mythology being inside the mind of the creator. Because I realized that's me. These are all character qualities, personalities, and ideas and concepts that are all inside of me battling each other. And they all came from a fucking place. And whatever that place is and how it came and when it came, it's my job to figure that out and put it inside as the mythology. So in many aspects, this story is the story of me. Again, it's not like I sat down and thought all of that shit in the beginning. It's just what I've realized along the way. So when you watch the Forgotten series unfold slowly over time, you'll start to really see a person slowly unfolding in time. Though the beautiful thing about that mythology is it's not chronological. The formation of the Titans, which is the formation of Yondra, came long after the true creation of this world. Just like in the mythology. Things are made for a reason, and they're made in their right order. And though I never really realized why I was doing any of this, why any of this hit me, it all was born out of the idea of forgotten. When I would try and remember lore elements, I would do these kind of little podcasts for myself. So I could listen back and go, okay, yeah. Orpake was born here. Gotcha. Okay, I get it. Thies was the bad guy's name. Okay, but what about Ekbeovak? And I would record all this stuff for myself just to keep it all straight. And I'd listen back and make notes, And then all of a sudden I start writing documents. Okay, like we studied that one thought session for a few days now. Let's write about the magic of Atria. Let's write about that, finally. And I do. And it's great. And I thank the idea of me being able to record myself so if I can remember it all. But inside of that, it's a self-therapy, which was the original name of this channel was Writer's Therapy. Because that's what the process ended up being. It's a therapy session for myself that I'm playing out with made-up characters. Even I won't realize that at times. Even I don't see that that's what you're fucking doing here, dude. You're literally doing therapy. These aspects, these beings, are personality factors inside of yourself battling it out. I'll forget that so many times, and I'll just go down that road and keep like, okay, look at the Oapeg. Yeah, like he's the Forgotten King, and the Forgotten King made, the Ailman, and, I would just get lost in this. And what's so fascinating is along the way, people would join it. Like right now, there are 4 guys that are just like, and there's been 6 guys that have helped in the story, but 4 active right now that are actually helping me do this. It blows my fucking mind. They're not co-writers, they're friends, It's a lot of things like that you just don't really notice of what you're doing. And again, that's why I love the fucking title called The Forgotten. Because you could remember something, or mostly you could realize something in real time. It manifests before you, and you can instantly forget that realization. Just because another word was said that took you off of it. That's what's fascinating about forgetting. Because in my mind, forgetting is hope. Or I should say, there is a hope in forgetting. And that to me means you have the ability to remember it once again. Because it's not lost, it's forgotten. It means it's in there somewhere, you have to unravel it. And as I slowly realized that to be the truth, slowly did that become what the story is about. A being trying to remember himself once again through all of the smaller beings that he made or was a part of being made, to helping him become whole again. Because the story of Oapake, otherwise known as the Forgotten King, or Dulag, is the story of a god trapped in the realm of creation. A story of a god trapped there and possibly betrayed. He doesn't remember. Was it my brother? Was it my wife? Who trapped me here? And the longer he stays, the more crazy he goes, because inside the realm of creation, it's too much for a mortal mind, and it will drive you mad. And so he tries to get himself out of it by creating conveyors that can act upon small, lesser mortals to be his conduits, or fragment of his own body splintered throughout the world to become unified once again so he can be born through them, through their minds, through the astral realm. That's the story of Owapek, and that's the story of me too. And I never really kind of thought of it until all the years it took, all these 12 years. This is a newer revelation, which is the name of the first book. Because it's a revelation, is the forgotten revelation. Sorry, that's not. The second book is the forgotten revelation. The first book is the forgotten sacrifice. But in the writing, I always thought it was Owapek who was narrating this to himself, as he's telling me, the writer, to write it down, as I am conveying it to the God above me, to say, what do I do with all this? Help me. It's been a fucking journey, man. It really has, and I just wanted to introduce this to you, so you know what's going to be happening here. Now, throughout this podcast series, like I said, I'm going to explore the actual mythology. I'll be telling the story of this world slowly. In conjunction with the Forgotten series, I will be going more in depth. I will be taking my time. I will tell you how it came to be. I'll give you the meta stories of it, the behind the scenes of how this was born. I will be showing you interviews. I will be showing you creation stories that works in conjunction with the telling of this lore. And also I'll be telling you how I feel about it now and how I felt about it then, and what does this all mean to me. And that's going to be the major story of it. And I hope to have each episode at least an hour long, at the very least, so you could really dive into it and get lost. But I'm really excited to see where this all goes and what happens here. And just what we will uncover in the creation and discovery of this once forgotten myth.